Okay, so now we should be recording too. Hopefully we get the little yellow dot. Okay, so welcome everybody. Thank you again for showing up. This is definitely worthwhile, and our last time that we will be talking about review for AP Human Geography. Congratulations, you made it to the end. So these FRQs were to get you to think about everything that's going on and really try to bring everything together at the end of all of this. Sorry, I'm also trying to figure out how to work chat on the screen share, and it doesn't look like it's working out for me, but whatever. So here's the deal. I'll go through and I'm going to talk about all the potential answers or where you should have thought about this stuff. And in a way, it's also going to wrap everything up for you. So the first FRQ, obviously talking about population statistics, and this could be a very easy question, just straight population stuff, but we really wanted to try and test you and pull from other units. So the first question is, describe why one of the countries in the chart are considered to be in stage 2 of the demographic transition model. Now look, just about every country on there, well, you know what, I'd even be more specific. I would say Ethiopia and Nigeria are your best two cases to say that they are in stage 2 of the demographic transition model. And that would be indicated by, one, their incredibly high birth rate to low death rate and their total fertility rates, right? Because we know in stage 2 of the demographic transition model, we see that population explosion and we also see the death rates drop down. That's what, when you have this question, and these are the types of questions you're going to see on the AP exam on Tuesday, is that you have to go through and explain all of that, because you're describing what stage 2 of the demographic transition model is, and then you have to describe why this example fits that description. Then part B says, describe the relationship between birth rate and infant mortality rate as the epidemiological transition occurs in a country. Look, all you really had to talk about here, and you see it in the chart above, that as countries bring down their total fertility rates, their infant mortality rates also drop. So you should have talked about things like the fact that birth rates are dropping due to contraceptives, advances in opportunities for women. I mean, you could talk about development, you could talk about economic development, you could talk about social cultural changes, you could talk about migration patterns, people moving in to urban areas instead of rural ones where the need for so many kids isn't there. But at the same time, you're also seeing more access to healthcare and people getting that healthcare. So it's bringing that infant mortality rate down. And when you bring that infant mortality rate down, it also brings down the birth rate, because people don't say, okay, we're going to keep having kids and see how many last. It's, okay, we're just going to have 2 and that's going to be it, right? And especially if you're dropping words like family planning in there, you're going to get all the points. So the part C says, explain what the total fertility rate and infant mortality rate imply about the roles of women in countries listed in the table. So once again, we're looking at demographic data and tying it to development, and especially development of women, because when we focus on the development of women, above all, that is the best way to develop a country, because if you're not utilizing 50% of your population, or just the other half of your population, to make money, develop, build infrastructure, they're really losing that resource. So once again, we have to explain what the total fertility rate and infant mortality rate imply about the roles of women. So we know pattern-wise that when there's high total fertility rates and high infant mortality rates, that women are generally stuck in traditional roles, probably in some type of agriculture work, staying at home, having kids, taking care of the kids, and that is the cultural norm. But we know as countries develop and those total fertility rates drop and the infant mortality rates drop, that the role of women changes and that they go out and they go get jobs where they're earning money. And that's the difference, guys. Women have always worked. Women always work no matter what. Now, but they can go out and get their own paid jobs, right? Now they don't have to stay home with kids and work in an agricultural setting, and they can, go out, get an education, go get a job, then give those kids the money for their education, and they can go out and do that. Then we move on to part D, explain the migration impacts of low fertility rate in South Africa using the data on the chart. Now, this week, multiple students have come to our tutoring to ask about this. They're like, what could this answer be? Well, first off, let's look at the statistics for South Africa. They have 58 million people, their birth rate's 21, their death rate's 9, their total fertility rate is 2.1, which is pretty low. That's close to that replacement rate of 2.1. Their infant mortality rate is the third highest, but look at the percent urban population. 66% of their population lives in an urban area. So just based off this data, especially compared to the other countries, you could say that South Africa is probably the most developed country of these four that are on here. So what does that say? How does that change migration? And that is pulling from chapter 3, from stuff in chapter 2. Well, we know the number one reason why people migrate is for a job. We also know that the typical migration pattern inside a developing country is rural to urban because they are industrializing. They're moving on to jobs that pay better. So what you should have talked about was, because of the low fertility rate in South Africa, clearly they're more developed and they have more urbanization. Thus, that's a pull factor to bring people in from the surrounding areas because they're going to want to look for a job. So right now, I'll take some questions. I'm going to stop the screen share real quick so I can see the chat. Some of you are very distracted, especially Jeremy and Evan. Or maybe that was later. Okay. Yep, I'm calling you out, Evan. All right, so if no one has any questions, I don't see any typed in the chat, so I'm going to move on to the next ones. That is okay. So now we're looking at immigrants admitted to the United States. This one also caused a lot of frustration for students this week. You had to know a little bit of history because we did talk about this chart. We did talk about the 3 peaks of migration. And we know that all of these migrants came to the United States in the hope of jobs, right? So the first one. Now, this was a great FRQ because it made you focus on the different aspects of speed. It is critical that when you get a social question, you answer with social answers. If you get an economic question, you have to talk about money, right? Because it could be correct information, but you won't get it correct if you don't have it right. So what I would recommend, pro tip, make yourself a little one-pager for the exam and have speed at the top and maybe list some examples of each one so you know what to write about if you get these in an FRQ. So A, explain a demographic push factor associated with migration into the US during the early 20th century peak. So we're looking at the peaks from that 1990 right up until 1920. What's a demographic push factor that's pushing those people out of those countries? Well, we know that the first peak is from Northwest Europe. We know that they just went through the Industrial Revolution. And we know because of the Industrial Revolution, it pushed them to stage 2 of the demographic transition model. During the demographic transition model in stage 2, you see population explosion ramp up. England's very tiny. So what would be the demographic push factor? Overpopulation. It was a very long-winded response to get that, but you had to explain all of those things in an explained question. You go, they have a population explosion in that country. There's too many people, not enough jobs. They're going to leave and come to the United States where there's a lot more space. Then it says, discuss how change in the economic structure of the US promoted immigration in the early 20th century. Once again, there's only 2 places on this planet that went through the Industrial Revolution, and that was England and the United States at the same time. Ooh, looks like we have a question. Maybe. Chat. Oh. No, never mind. But I figured out how to bring up chat, so thank you for the random comment. Now I have that pulled up. All right. So what economic structure change happened? The Industrial Revolution. You should talk, the first thing you should say is the Industrial Revolution happened, tons of people started moving to urban areas, and they started building cities, and everybody needed jobs and factories and so on and so forth. Okay, Sarah, what's your question? If you're gonna type in chat, or you know what, you're right here, I can unmute you. Maybe. All right, Sarah, go ahead.
Okay, so when you're talking about part A, would the search for economic opportunity and food security, because I went with Ireland for part A to explain demographic push factor, because I remembered that they had both a famine and they were experiencing a lack of work. Would that be a good answer? Or
and this is the perfect example. That is 100% correct. That is absolutely the things that happen there. But because they're specifically talking about demographics, you wouldn't be awarded points for it. For the famine, that's more of an environmental push factor. or an economic push factor. Jobs are an economic push factor. You know, lack of jobs in that place, or economic opportunity. That's what that stuff would fall under. You want to focus, when it's demographic, it's just population statistics. Birth rates, death rates, TFR, NIR, all that stuff, demographics.
Okay.
Cool. Good question, really good question, because I know a lot of other students struggle with it. Anything else?
Nope.
Okay, I'm gonna put you back on mute, thank you. All right, so moving on to C now, explain a political push factor associated with the source region related to the in-migration in the late 20th century. Okay, so in the late 20th century, where did the migrants come from? Well, it's not Europe anymore, because now they have transitioned into stage 3, they've dropped their birth rate, they're not sending migrants anymore. They got the jobs handled, they got the infrastructure handled, that's all done. So when Europe went into stage 3, we went into stage 3, everyone else goes into stage 2 because of the medical revolution, right? And now they have the population explosion. And if this question was asking for a demographic push factor, you could use that same one again, but they're not. They're saying political push factor. And here's the thing, on the AP exam, you might be asked about something where you're like, I have no idea what happened in that place. That's okay, because you can still come up with an answer. All you gotta do is explain a political push factor. War. You don't have to talk about the Cold War. You don't have to talk about the Vietnam War. The fact that you just say war was there, war was happening, that was the push factor to get them out. That works. That completely works, and you'll get it. Okay, good question from Jeremy. If they're leaving Europe due to the Industrial Revolution, why are they coming to the US for the Industrial Revolution? Okay, so here's the difference between our Industrial Revolutions. England is tiny, very small. Even though they're going through the Industrial Revolution, they don't have the infrastructure to have everybody there. They don't have the space. So they're going to the United States because, one, there's the job opportunities from the Industrial Revolution. There's just more space available for people, though. Right now they can have more opportunities here because the jobs are available. There's other reasons too, besides the demographic push factor, the economic pull factor, and the economic push factor. There's religious freedom, that's a social aspect for these people, and the environmental one, especially as Sarah mentioned for the Irish, the potato famine. So it's a bunch of different reasons that immigrants decided to come here, but you have to be able to focus on each individual point. I hope that cleared it up. All right, and then it says, pick one of the peaks of migration into the United States and discuss where that ethnicity is today. So you would talk about migration patterns. You would say that migrants generally migrate to the closest urban area that they can get to. And in those urban areas, they're going to migrate to places where other people look like them, those ethnic enclaves, right? That great vocab word. And they're practicing chain migration on top of that. And when you're explaining all of this great stuff, because that's what you have to do, then you go and you say, well, I'm going to analyze the third peak. I know that that third peak was full of Asian immigrants and Latin immigrants. And today, Asian Americans are still along the West Coast. They haven't migrated out of that area because they still see that migration pattern today, and they've established themselves and assimilated and all that other good stuff that you want to talk about. And same thing with the people from Latin America. They're in the southern and southwest part of the United States. And you have to be very specific about those regions in the US when you answer this, because you're explaining why they're there and this historical movement that has happened over time. And then finally, discuss one's social centrifugal impact. I was just trying to throw in other words from other units, guys. We know that centrifugal forces are things that force people apart. So what is a social thing that forces people apart about migrants? And I mean migrants themselves. We're talking social aspects here. Social is culture, language, religion. And if there's something we love to fight over, especially when migrants come to a new country, it's culture, language, and religion. Right? Why can't they assimilate? Why can't they be like us? Why can't they speak our language? Why can't they practice our religion? Why do they have to do their thing? Why do I have to accommodate them? All of these things are what you can talk about as social centrifugal impacts, that culture clash. So it seemed like a really difficult question, but you had a bunch of answers that you could use as long as it involved social. Well, we gotta take a quick break. I got someone trying to join. I'll take questions right now, if anybody has them. Checking the chat right now. I'm not seeing any. I'll give another minute or two. Seeing anything from anybody? No raised hands. All right, so this must have been easy. Fantastic. All right, now we're moving on to the population pyramid one. This one was very straightforward. I tried to, like I said, pull other units. So what are the migration patterns in country A and country B? Well, right away, you should have been able to identify that country A is, okay, we have a previous question or question about the previous FRQ. With saying the original population would conflict with each other. Well, the original population is not going to fight with itself, but they are going to fight with the new immigrants. So you can say that, but you should really be specific about what they're going to be fighting over, because you can't, when you're answering this response, you don't want to just say, oh, they're going to fight with migrants, right? Like that won't work. You have to be specific about a social centrifugal force. So bring up culture, bring up religion, bring up language, those things that we talked about. Okay. So as I said in this FRQ with the population pyramids, right away, you should be able to identify country A as a developing country and country B as a more developed country. And then you have to go back to your migration patterns in those countries, right? So what is the migration pattern in the developing world? Well, that's rural to urban, because as they are developing, they're moving out of agriculture and they're moving to a more industrialized lifestyle. So people are moving to cities, rural to urban. Then in B, it's a more developed country, and we're not urbanizing. We're not building cities. Not everybody's dream is to move to a city. We are moving to the suburbs. So those are the answers that you should have put for each one, that in country A, they're practicing rural to urban migration, and in country B, they're practicing urban to suburban. Now that is very short. You had to discuss this. So you had to be able to pull why. You would say, country A is an LDC. It's indicated by its population pyramid with its large base at the bottom. So clearly they're not as developed. So they're practicing rural to urban. You get the drift. You catch my drift at this point. So I'm just giving you the straightforward answers. Then pick a country and discuss its economic structure based on its population pyramid. So, I mean, this wraps into the previous questions. When you're explaining these countries, you have to talk about what is the prominent way that people are making their money. The easiest one would probably be to go country A and just say it's agriculture based. You could say it's an export oriented economy. You could say that it's in the earlier stages of development. And if we did have unit 6 on this test, you could talk about Rostow's model and stuff like that, but it's not, so don't. But I mean, who cares if you sprinkle it in? If you know it, you know it. But at the end of the day, obviously you should be saying it's agricultural based with a little bit of an industry for country A. And if you're looking at country B, for those that pick that, I would say post-industrial. They're not working in factories anymore. Clearly that's a very late stage 3 country or a solid stage 4 country. And we know today our stage 4 countries are not factories. Do we have factories in the United States? We don't. So be really careful before just saying that, oh, if they're more developed they have factories, and if they're not, they're farming, because we know there are other jobs. And then finally, using demographic characteristics discuss what country is most likely to be part of a supranational organization. Now, a student brought up a good point. Just because a country is developing, does that mean it can't be part of a supranational organization? No, not at all. Any country can be part of a supranational organization as long as they're allowed in by that organization. And we know of 2 prominent supranational organizations, and that's the European Union, which is the only one you should talk about if you ever have to. And then the second one is the African Union, which you only use if you can't use the European Union, right? Because they're both so similar. So which one is most likely? You have to discuss this. So you would say country B, because country B is more developed. They probably have a higher HDI number. They demographically, they have a lower total fertility rate. They don't have dependency ratio problems. And they're in stage 4 of the demographic transition model. So they have dealt with the basic problems of a country demographically, and they can focus on things like a supranational organization. All right, so that's everything for that one. Any questions? I don't see any, so that's going well. It's going good. So I'm going to move on to this next one because I do want to keep this short. So describe a type of agriculture used in the past in the shaded areas. Guys, you're just describing, you know, shifting cultivation. I don't know why I use the word describe. I guess you could go, you should probably go a little more in depth. You can't just put shifting cultivation. You would say, you know, shifting cultivation, it was a type of subsistence agriculture used in the past in these shaded areas before globalization, you know, or modern agriculture. Excuse me. So then moving on to part B, probably one of the harder ones of this FRQ, it says explain how neo-colonialism and modern globalization have changed the type of agriculture in these shaded areas. Include the type of agriculture these places have switched to. So in the past, we know that these places have been colonies, right? And the role of a colony was to just give away resources, otherwise all the people there would be killed. That's how colonies work. Well, we don't have colonies anymore. But we, and I say we as the developed world, still go to these places for those goods. And they sell those goods because of colonialism. They're used to exporting raw materials. So once they're no longer colonies and they need to figure out how to make money, they go, well, I'm just going to export raw materials. But here's where the neocolonialism comes into play, that new colonialism and this globalization. These countries are going to sell those raw materials, right? They're going to sell them to the developed world because we love things like avocado and coffee and chocolate. But the question is, why can't they make that on their own? Why are they still, to this day in 2020, exporting these raw materials? It's because they are trapped in doing that. Because the more developed world will go to them and say, yeah, we'll keep buying avocados from you and we'll keep buying this chocolate from you and this coffee from you at this price. And then the countries go, well, we want to pay our workers more, or we want to build infrastructure, or we want to make our own coffee. So we have to charge you more, right? We have to charge you $1 more or $5 more per item, whatever. Well, then the developed countries go, no thanks. We'll just go somewhere else that'll do it cheaper. And now all of a sudden that country has lost its main source of income. That's why we call it neo-colonialism, because the developed world is still very much controlling the developing world and its resources just through money instead of force, right? We've just changed the game. At least that's what people claim. But once again, let's go back and talk about how, or explain how neo-colonialism and modern globalization have changed the type of agriculture. The fact is that shifting cultivation doesn't cut it. It's subsistence farming. You can't feed a lot of people on it. You can't make a lot of money off of it. You can't grow a bunch of crops and sell it to everybody in the world. So what have they changed to? They've changed to big agribusiness, things like plantation agriculture and ranching agriculture, right? Those are the two main ones in these shaded areas because you can cut down all these trees, sell the trees, right, in these rainforests, and then you have ranching set up where you have tons of beef that you can export. Or you're in a humid climate where you can grow things on a plantation, cash crops like avocados, rubber, tobacco, coffee, chocolate, all these cash crops that can sell and make your country money, but it doesn't feed you. And it's not enough money to progress your country, so you're always stuck in this limbo. So what you had to explain was how these countries are stuck exporting these goods from their new types of agriculture, predominantly plantation and ranching. Hopefully this is making sense to you. Then you had to compare the migration trends in each of the areas. Well, we're comparing. They're all similar. We talked about this before. The natural migration trend in the developing world is rural to urban. Remember, they're moving from these rural areas where they were practicing some type of plantation agriculture or some type of ranching, and they're moving to the urban coastal areas where they can make some money being part of this export-oriented trade still. And then finally, discuss an environmental consequence. Look, every year I grade FRQs, and there's always a question where it says you can talk about social, political, or environmental. No student ever writes about environmental consequences, and they are some of the easiest ones to write about, right? If we are using plantation agriculture and ranching agriculture in these places, deforestation, right there. That's the environmental consequence because they have to cut down these trees to make the land for it. And now that they've cut down these trees and they got all these cattle eating the grass, there's going to be desertification. They're using the soil too much. They're over producing these cash crops, which is destroying the soil, topsoil loss. All of these are potential answers. So guys, I would really say know your environmental consequences of agriculture from chapter 10. And on that one pager, just write down some of the ideas. Because if one FRQ says, give me environmental consequences of blank, you'll have a whole list of them, right? And it's just something that students tend to forget. All right, moving on to our last FRQ. If anybody has any questions for the previous one, please put them in the chat and I will refer to them after. But endangerment of rainforest species be good for Part D? Yeah, that goes into deforestation. When you're talking about the trees getting cut down, that's fantastic to bring up. Not only are you talking about the potential loss of air that all these trees produce, but all the species that live there. That was a really good question. Don't listen to Evan. He's just trying to bring you down. All right, so on to our last one. We're looking at migration trends. We're looking at migration trends around the world. So it says, pick a migration pattern on the map and explain how it's an example of international migration from a periphery region to a core region. Please do not follow any of those instructions. Do not press Alt F4. You will not get infinite money. Everything will close. So, so what is a international migration pattern from periphery to core region? So first off, you have to explain what the periphery and core are. So you would say that the core countries are the ones that are economically strong, that use the periphery countries for its raw materials and its labor, right? While the periphery relies on the core for money and like goods. So what one would you pick? Well, here's a list of them. You could pick A, B, F, C, D, and K. Those were all the potential ones because those are all the patterns where they're going from some developing nation, the periphery, to the economic core, some developed country. Then B, describe an economic impact of this type of migration on the receiving country. Well, what is going to change economically in this more developed country now because immigrants are coming to the country? They're taking jobs people don't want to do. Or wait. Okay, I have a question from Jocelyn. I've been referring to international migration instead of regional migration for all my FRQs. Is it viable or will points be deducted? No, that's fine. International, regional, it's the same thing. You're moving region to region or nation to nation. And when they move from one region to another region, they're still technically moving from one nation to another nation. So that's perfectly fine. You're fine. You're good. No one is going to be that specific when they're grading. Now, be good about your immigration. I see that. So is immigration and emigration? Yes, those do mean different things. Remember, immigration is moving in, emigration is exiting. So you can remember it with that. Same thing with in and out migration. All right, so back to this because I do want to finish this up so I can let you all go. Describe an economic impact. Look, why is it that these more developed countries take in immigrants? Is because there's a bunch of jobs that the citizens in those countries don't want. So the economic impact is that you have a bunch of people now who are willing to do the jobs that citizens in those countries don't want to do. Because I don't want to get up in the morning and go pick fruit. I don't want to do that. I don't want to work in the back of a hotel washing dishes or work in the back of a restaurant cooking food. Those jobs are really hard and I don't want to do that. And a majority of you don't either. And that's why we have migrants, because they're willing to do those jobs that we don't want to do. All right, so moving on to political impacts. Now, this is where it gets interesting because when you have migrants, you can talk about politics, right? And the best one that you should have used is either the migration pattern from C or the migration pattern C from Africa to Europe, because they have the guest worker program. So that's what you should have talked about, was the political impact is that the government will have to create laws for these immigrants to change the immigration process or some way have an immigration process set up, whether it be guest workers in Europe where they come for a short amount of time, they do the job and then they go back. Or you could talk about B with the migration pattern from Latin America into the United States, knowing that we don't have a guest worker program. So the government is going to have to create some type of law or some type of structure for the immigration process to get these people in here and check these people and make sure that who's coming in is safe and they can be a resident and they can work here and so on and so forth. The government has to respond with laws for immigration. Or you could say they'll respond with laws cracking down on immigration. That's perfectly fine too, because you could talk about either side, right? Because technically it's all correct. So you could say that a political impact would be that, you know, the government is going to put in more restrictions on immigration to stop immigration. You could talk about, you know, physical barriers like a wall being built, because that is a response to immigration as long as it's political. Okay, so did you have to use a specific example from the diagram, or could you just give an example of an impact? Great question. Here's an FRQ tip for you. In the question, in B and C, it did not say to reference a migration pattern on that map. But if you do, if you use that stimulus, if you say the migration trend from B, Latin America, to the United States, and you explain that well and use vocab, you have just crushed the FRQ. And the reader now knows that you know everything about this and they don't have to question giving you points. In fact, in a later response, it might be a little shaky, your response, but the reader's gonna go, nah, this kid knows it, it's fine. They crushed the earlier ones. I know that they know this stuff, we can move on, right? So really important, try to use the stimulus as much as you can, even when you don't have to. And if you can't use the stimulus, that's okay, but try to incorporate it as much as you can because it is there for a reason. All right, and then finally, D, discuss how migration from the periphery can impact a core country demographically. All right, so yeah, impact, vocab, stimulus examples. I know it's a lot of stuff thrown at you. So how does migration affect a country demographically? Now you have to focus on population statistics, right? We know that in developed nations that they generally have problems with total fertility rates. They're either at 2.1 or they're starting to fall below 2.1. And what do we do to fix that replacement rate? Migration, right? So the impact demographically is raising the total fertility rate, raising the birth rate, moving the dependency ratio. You could talk about that because we know that in places like the United States and Europe, we have this elderly dependency ratio on our population pyramid. It's like upside down like this. And what helps stop that and make it more rectangular is migrants, because they fill other parts of the demographic or of the population pyramids. So you could have talked about any part demographically, as long as you talked about total fertility rates going up, birth rates going up, or decreasing the dependency ratio in the developed countries. Those are really the three answers you should have went with when talking about the demographic impacts of migrants. So that is it. Those are the FRQs. I know it was a lot of material. I know it was a lot of stuff. I know it was a lot of stuff to throw at you. But that's it. If you have any questions, go ahead and type them in chat. Otherwise, you are more than welcome to leave. I'll be posting this video to YouTube so you can reference it again. I'll say now that we will probably, we will have one more Zoom meeting, or I'll do a YouTube live on Tuesday, because I do want to talk to you guys one more time before your exam. So it doesn't look like there's any questions, so I am going to end the recording. Stop the share.